Good evening. Our top story this week. In New Jersey, CPS agents accompanied by the SWAT team attempt to undermine a guy's Second Amendment rights after a picture of his kid with his new .22 is posted to Facebook, then gets sent on their way as soon as the father calls his lawyer. In Louisiana, the child protective industry is putting out a 24-month deadline for the kids to either be given back to their parents or put up for adoption. In California, studies are showing a disproportionate number of black children being snatched and held in Los Angeles County's foster care system. And the Los Angeles child protective industry is finally trying to make the foster care system safe for the kids. In Maine, the child protective industry is up in arms over what to do with all the kids they've been snatching but didn't prepare for. And the newspaper had a hard time reporting on that story because of the piss-poor data tracking practices and multiple computer systems of the Maine state's child protective industry. In Michigan, a court-appointed monitor is still concerned about safety in the state's foster care system because 269 children were abused in the state's foster care system during the first half of 2012. In Missouri, the child protective industry is heavily guarding their secrets by refusing to release the records on any child deaths in the state. In Nebraska, 2 state workers are fired for failing to get their hands on $1.8 million in federal reimbursements. In Ohio, lawmakers are considering a bill to open up adoption records to kids who turn 18 and give them access to their original birth certificates. And in Oregon, foster kids are pushing for a Bill of Rights so they can do the things that they want to do just like all the other kids. In Rhode Island, private child welfare agencies are trying to get more money from the child protective industry. In South Dakota, Spirit Lake families are suing the child protective industry for violating their parental rights. New warnings are being issued for the overuse of antipsychotic medications on kids who are covered under Medicaid. And in Wisconsin, the child protective industry is bragging that abuse in their foster care system is at a historic low, while bouncing kids from home to home is at an all-time high. The number of Russian orphans is up this year, and even though the Russians are still mad because the adoptive parents of an adopted boy who died accidentally in Texas weren't charged with murder and cut all of you wannabe adopted parents off, they're still insisting on monitoring the lives of Russian children adopted by American families. Pope Francis says that he didn't know that babies were being taken from political detainees during Argentina's dirty war and given up for adoption to politically connected families. It's getting more difficult to adopt kids from China due to tougher regulations that are designed to prevent child trafficking by requiring background checks to make sure the kids are really orphans. In Ireland, the media is going to be given access to the family courts when the child protective industry is trying to take or keep kids away from their parents. Sweden starts paying out compensation to former foster kids who were abused in care between 1920 and 1980. And in the Netherlands, people of Turkish descent are protesting against a lesbian couple who is fostering a Muslim child. In Canada, a couple from Montreal files a complaint against the child protective industry for snatching their baby after the mother's acid reflux medication triggers a false positive drug test. In Ontario, they're taking a look at what they're calling funding flaws, which causes perverse incentives for keeping foster kids in care for longer. In British Columbia, Canada's only domestic violence shelter for men and their kids closes due to a lack of funding. And a British Columbia social worker beats the crap out of her boyfriend. In Australia this week, they're packing them in at the foster homes as concerns are being raised about foster families taking on more than 5 kids at a time. The Australian child protective industry is failing to provide early intervention so that the stolen kids can be safely reunited with their families. Prime Minister Julia Gillard delivers an official apology for the country's policy of forced adoption from the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, which caused years of distress for the affected families, and won't erase the past decades of lies. In New Zealand, the victims of forced adoption are unlikely to ever receive an apology. And according to a British journalist, Australia's scandal of forced adoption is happening in jolly old England today. Also in England, a foster family is fighting the deportation of their foster kid back to Afghanistan. The British government is cutting funding for free legal aid to poor people caught up in the family court system. And Northamptonshire Council pledges to fix all of their problems after being criticized by a watchdog group last week. In entertainment news this week, Fox News' Bill O'Reilly is caught cheating in his child custody battle by paying to turn the children's custodial arbitrator into his personal nanny. In Arizona, a woman pleads guilty to abusing her adopted son. In Louisiana, there still hasn't been a trial in almost 2 years since a little foster kid died while in care. In California, the case is dismissed for a CPS agent who got busted with more than 250 pot plants in her house. And the trial continues for 2 people who are accused of abusing 9 kids in their care, 4 of which were foster kids. In New York, a judge is being accused of placing an infant in a dangerous home with a sex offender. In Ohio, a doctor is found guilty of failing to report sexual abuse. In Virginia, a former social worker is being accused of having sex with a foster child. In New York, the cops are on the lookout for a woman who snatched her nephew from his foster home. And finally, tonight in Hawaii, a mom who threatened to take her autistic son out of school because they weren't protecting him from bullies is threatened with a report to Child Protective Industry for violating the school's attendance policy. For these stories and all the latest dirt on the Child Protective Industry, visit www.legallykidnapped.com. And until next week, this is Baby LK. Over and out.